5 NBA championships between 1999 and 2014. A staggering consistency that spanned nearly 2 decades. While other dynasties rose and fell with a flurry of superstar power or flashy play, the San Antonio Spurs, under the watchful eye of Gregg Popovich and the quiet brilliance of Tim Duncan, carved out a legacy of relentless, almost surgical, dominance. They weren't flashy. They didn't talk trash. They didn't chase the spotlight. But when June rolled around, they were the last team you wanted to see. What was their secret? Why did they consistently seem to have an answer for every opponent, every strategy, every challenge on the grandest stage of them all? The San Antonio Spurs became every contender's worst nightmare. Today, we're diving into the question that haunted countless opponents, perplexed analysts, and occasionally frustrated the opposing fans. Why was it so hard to beat the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA Finals? To understand the Spurs' Finals dominance, you need to start with one word: culture. At the very core of the Spurs' impenetrable fortress was their legendary head coach, Popovich. Popovich wasn't just a coach, he was an architect, a philosopher, a disciplinarian, and a master motivator. His coaching philosophy wasn't about relying on one transcendent superstar, though they certainly had one in Tim Duncan. No superstar ever outshone the system, not even Duncan. Where other franchises leaned into egos and headlines, the Spurs leaned into fundamentals and film sessions. It wasn't about who's the man. It was about how do we win. Their brand of basketball didn't look spectacular. But it worked. It was built on a foundation of fundamental principles that permeated every aspect of the organization. Popovich built an empire in San Antonio rooted in discipline, humility, and trust. First and foremost, team over individual. Popovich relentlessly preached selflessness. The name on the front of the jersey always mattered more than the name on the back. You saw it in their offense. The constant ball movement, the extra pass, the willingness of even their stars to defer for a better shot. The 2014 Finals against the LeBron James-led Miami Heat is a perfect example. The Spurs moved the ball with an almost unheard of fluidity, racking up assists and making the Heat's defense look bewildered. They shot an incredible 52.8% from the field in that series, the highest in NBA Finals history, a testament to their unselfishness and efficiency. This wasn't just about offense. It was a cultural bedrock. Popovich famously sought out players who had gotten over themselves. Players who prioritized the collective success, who embraced their roles, no matter how big or small. This created an unparalleled team chemistry, a locker room devoid of ego clashes and full of mutual respect. While other teams flamed out chasing stardom, the Spurs quietly racked up wins and rings. Championship teams usually have a short shelf life. Not the Spurs. From 1999 to 2014, they reached 6 NBA Finals and won 5. That's not just a dynasty. That's a reign across 3 different eras. Why? Because their core stayed rock solid. TD. Manu. Tony. 3 players. 3 continents. One perfect blend of skill, unselfishness, and basketball IQ. They knew each other's games inside out. No drama. No divas. Just team-first basketball. And then, there was Duncan. The big fundamental. While other superstars craved the spotlight, Duncan embraced the shadows. His leadership wasn't about fiery speeches or highlight reel dunks, it was about unwavering consistency, quiet confidence, and leading by example. Duncan's work ethic was legendary. Often the first in the gym and the last to leave. This set an undeniable standard for every single player who walked through the Spurs' doors. Imagine being a young player, joining a team with a future Hall of Famer like Duncan. You saw his dedication, his humility, his relentless pursuit of perfection, even in the mundane. That kind of leadership is infectious. It elevated everyone around him, from Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, who became perennial All-Stars and Hall of Famers themselves, to the glue guys and role players who consistently performed above expectations. Duncan made everyone better simply by being himself. And Pop? He was the glue adjusting to every era, every matchup, every challenge. His and the Spurs front office's commitment to player development was unparalleled. Popovich and his staff had an uncanny ability to identify talent, often in overlooked places, and then meticulously mold them into essential contributors. Think about Kawhi Leonard, drafted as a defensive specialist, evolving into a two-way superstar. Or Ginobili, a late second-round pick who became a sixth man of the year and one of the most exciting, innovative players of his era. They weren't just acquiring talent, they were cultivating it, patiently, deliberately, and effectively. Here's the thing about the Spurs system. It neutralized chaos. Where other teams thrived on athleticism and improvisation, San Antonio ran a machine. Every cut, every pass, every rotation. It was all deliberate. They passed up good shots for great shots. They never forced the moment, they waited for it. And that's a nightmare in the finals. Why? Because when the pressure's high, most teams break their system. They go hero ball. They panic. The Spurs? They tighten the screws. Their execution gets sharper. Their decisions get smarter. It's like trying to outchess a computer while you're blindfolded. Offense wins games. But defense? That wins championships. And the Spurs? They were surgeons on the defensive end. It started with Duncan, one of the greatest defensive anchor ever. He wasn't flashy, but his positioning was flawless. He made life miserable for elite scorers in every era, from Shaq to LeBron. Then you had Bruce Bowen, a perimeter pest with surgical footwork. Manu could draw charges like an art form. And Kawhi? We'll get to him later. This leads us to another crucial factor: adaptability and innovation. While the Spurs were known for their fundamentals, they were far from stagnant. Popovich constantly evolved his strategies to stay ahead of the curve. He wasn't afraid to experiment, to tweak, to completely overhaul their approach if necessary. Early Spurs teams were built around a dominant post presence with Duncan and David Robinson. But as the game shifted, so did the Spurs. By 2014, they were a beautifully flowing offensive machine, embracing ball movement and three-point shooting, a stark contrast to their earlier iterations. This adaptability extended to their defensive schemes as well. They were masters of disrupting opposing offenses, switching effectively, closing out on shooters, and forcing opponents into uncomfortable positions. Their defensive discipline was a hallmark, built on communication and a collective understanding of their opponent's strengths and weaknesses. They were always a step ahead, always ready to adjust. The Spurs didn't gamble. They didn't chase highlights. They just suffocated you, possession after possession. When the lights are brightest, most teams get tight. The Spurs? They got calmer. They treated the finals like any other game. No theatrics. No distractions. Just business. The Spurs also possessed a unique blend of veteran savvy and youthful exuberance. Their core of Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili provided the stability and experience, while younger players like Kawhi, Danny Green, and Tiago Splitter brought energy, athleticism, and a willingness to learn. This balanced roster allowed them to maintain a high level of performance over grueling playoff series, managing minutes effectively and ensuring fresh legs for critical moments. Let's not forget the psychological edge. The Spurs were notoriously unflappable. They rarely got rattled, even in the face of adversity. This came from years of playing together, a deep trust in their system, and the calm leadership of Popovich and Duncan. Remember 2013? They were seconds away from beating LeBron James' Miami Heat. And then Ray Allen hits a miracle shot. Game 6, lost. Game 7, lost. Season over. Losing Game 6 of the 2013 finals in heartbreaking fashion to the Heat would have shattered most teams. But the Spurs, remarkably, used it as fuel. They came back in 2014 with an almost terrifying focus, dissecting the Heat with surgical precision. It was a masterclass in mental fortitude. They came back angrier, sharper, and deadlier. They didn't just win. They demolished Miami in 5 games with maybe the most beautiful basketball ever played. That's mental toughness. That's championship DNA. By 2014, the old guard was nearing the end. But then came Leonard. In a finals featuring prime LeBron, it was Kawhi quiet, stoic Kawhi who snatched the finals MVP. He shut down James. He dunked on the entire Miami defense. And he looked like the future of the franchise. It was like passing the baton in real time. Kawhi represented everything Spurs basketball stood for. No ego. All effort. Maximum impact. Here's another reason they were so hard to beat. They evolved. The '99 Spurs won with size and grit. The 2003 Spurs leaned on Duncan's prime. By 2007, Parker was carving up defenses with speed. By 2014, they were playing beautiful, ball-moving, three-point spamming, positionless basketball. Pop didn't just adjust to the times, he outpaced them. They became the prototype for the modern NBA offense. Even the Warriors studied their 2014 tape. The Spurs could beat you slow or fast, with power or finesse. No matter the style, they had a counter. In essence, beating the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA Finals was like trying to punch through a perfectly woven steel net. They were fundamentally sound, incredibly disciplined, constantly evolving, and mentally unbreakable. They didn't rely on individual heroics as much as they relied on the collective strength of their unit. They were the epitome of team basketball, a concept often preached but rarely executed with such consistent brilliance. Their success wasn't about flashy plays or individual statistics. It was about the process, the fundamentals, the unwavering commitment to excellence, and the belief in each other. They made winning look almost inevitable, not because they were always the most talented team on paper, but because they were always the best team, in the truest sense of the word. Let's look at the scoreboard. In the finals, the Spurs went. 1999, beat the Knicks. 2003, beat the Nets. 2005, beat the Pistons. 2007, swept LeBron's Cavs. 2013, lost to the Heat in 7. 2014, beat the Heat in 5. 5 wins. 1 heartbreak. Even in their only finals loss, they were seconds away from glory. They didn't just beat teams, they exposed them. Every weakness. Every bad habit. Every lack of discipline. The Spurs found it and punished it. So why is it so hard to beat the Spurs in the finals? Because they don't beat themselves. They don't fold under pressure. They don't rely on talent alone. They rely on trust, execution, and accountability. They weren't built in a summer. They were built over decades, brick by brick, season by season. That kind of continuity? You can't replicate it with all-star trades. You can't simulate it with analytics. The Spurs weren't built to trend. They were built to last. The Spurs may not have the flashiest highlight reels. They may not dominate social media debates. But when it comes to winning, especially in the NBA Finals, they were a machine. A blueprint. A dynasty defined by everything that actually matters. So, the next time you reflect on the San Antonio Spurs dynasty, remember it wasn't just about championship trophies. It was about a blueprint for sustained success, a testament to the power of culture, coaching, and character. It was about why, for nearly 2 decades, beating the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA Finals was, for so many, the hardest challenge in all of basketball. So the next time you hear someone say the Spurs were just a boring championship team, just show them the rings.